Hey, well, good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. This is the new program that, well, let's call it Recycled program that the CBO is launching. You may have seen some emails and notes on this coming out, but we're very excited to relaunch the mini grant program, which is a program designed for last mile service across the state to help fill gaps. My name is Brian Martin. I'm senior manager here at CBO. Some of my colleagues are with us today. Kristen, Michael, and Adam. That's all I can see right now, but I'm sure there are others. So we're going to take about 45 minutes or so. We'll definitely take in some questions, but the idea is to share with you how we see this program going to run. It is not typical of our general programs. This one's a little more streamlined, and we'll open it up for questions throughout the space. But let's get started, and then we'll talk through this as we go. So very quickly, I think I just mentioned it. We wrote you to ask questions if you have them. We'll stop in certain areas for Q&As, and there's a Q&A at the end as well. This webinar will be recorded and posted to our website. And just in general, if you have questions, we're not able to address right now, please do follow up, and we'll make sure we get back to you as soon as possible. So, yeah, should be good. So we'll cover some of the components of this program, including the mapping tools, how to submit an application, the review itself, when we've got all of our applications in, touch a little bit on the challenge process that's built into this, and then what the final award process looks like. So this program is an amalgamation of CPF and SLFRF programs. The idea is to use any de-obligated funds that we've had to fund last mile projects across the state to help fill space or gaps where it's needed. For the most part, this is a program based on the Advanced CPF Grant Program Guidelines. That serves as the guiding document, even though we do have a document prepared as well that you can access on our website. So it's about $800,000 is what we have available. All submissions get reviewed under the same criteria, regardless of that funding source, which, as I mentioned, CPF and SLFRF. We put some links into the spreadsheet, the slide deck, which you'll see. That's the mini grant program guidelines. We would encourage all applicants to review those prior to submitting an application, and then if you need further clarification, which the mini grant program guidelines give, there's the advanced CPF program guidelines as well. There we go. Okay, it works. So for this program, eligible applicants are any entities that have previously been awarded a state or federal broadband deployment grant from us, which includes the high cost support mechanisms, and involves representatives from industry, local government, community-based organizations, nonprofits, tribal communities, utility providers, and any special partnerships. The application window will open today. That's October 8th. And will close on November 7th at 11:59. All projects must be completed by September 30th, 2026. That is due to the fact that the CPF and SLFRF funding expires in December. So we're really looking for any kind of projects that can get running as quickly as possible. Are there some comments that we need to address, Kristen?
No, I'll address them as we go, and I'll let you know if we need any assistance.
Okay, great. Thank you. And just as a reminder, I mentioned a bit about the dates. There's no real extension opportunities, I think, can be granted for the application window or for the project completion date. That is just due to the streamlined nature of this program, and we want to kind of stick to those. And obviously, we have a very hard stop in December of 2026. Eligible locations. So those are any that lack access to wireline speeds of at least 100 up, down 20 up. That's according to the FCC BDC data, and anything that's not already covered by federal or state enforceable commitments. We are allowing for CAAs to be included in this, even though they're not found on the map, and we'll get to the mapping piece in a second. But if you do have CAIs within your project area that you're looking to serve, please include those in your application. I do want to remind folks that service availability for satellite, whether it's geostationary or non-geostationary, and mobile coverage, they're not really factors we're considering in the eligibility for locations. So the technology we're looking for, you must be proposing fiber last mile service with speeds that are symmetrical to 100 megabits. Higher speed service is always encouraged, including gigabit service, but our minimum is symmetrical 100. There is a 20% match requirement, and you will need to provide evidence of matching funds. If there are any comments we should address, I'm happy to do that before we dive into the mapping section. All right, I've got my colleague Adam here to help us address any of the mapping requests or questions that come up. So we did publish 2 links to the mapping side of things, the eligible locations map. We encourage you to take a look at that. And then, of course, the downloadable list of eligible allocations. This list uses the CostQuest Broadband Serviceable Location Fabric version 6, and applicants must use their CostQuest license to map said locations. CBO cannot provide any latitude or longitudinal information or address information associated with that fabric license. All right, so submitting an application, unless there's any questions or comments we need to address to those sections.
Yes, I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead, John.
So, do I understand this right? This mini grant is only for prior award-winning entities and for fiber only?
Yeah, our preference, I think, is fiber here, and the eligible entities are those who've been previously awarded. It's really, due to the streamlined nature of this program and the fact there's such a short timeline. We really would like to ensure we can get these projects up and running quickly. Do want to address that, yes, while I understand there's, folks are trying to apply for any funds they can get, we do have the Advanced Local Program up and running, I'm hoping spring 2026, so there will be more funding opportunities from CBO, but we're trying to get these funds out the door and used as quickly as possible. So yes, I think I answered your question, but follow-ups on that?
Okay, thanks.
Mm-hmm. All right, we can move on to submitting an application. So applicants will need to download and complete a copy of our mini grant program project application template. That is going to be published shortly after, if not right before after this webinar. Applicants will need to submit this completed project. It's a XLSLX file to our advance inbox before the November 7th or by the November 7th deadline. There is a list of included attachments that need to be part of your application. You'll find those within the document, and we'll dive a little bit into that in a second. But when you do submit your application, the subject line should be mini grant program, the name of the applicant, and then what is the name of your project, just for organizing purposes. So when you do submit your application, you'll need to include applicant project information, the number of locations, the amount of the requested funds, and then you'll need to make sure you sign off on the attestation. There's a lot of, there's quite a few different attachments that we'll need to have included with your application. That's the high-level network design that shows the locations and your major network infrastructure. A detailed design will be required prior to your grant execution as well. So we'll make sure we follow up. Proof of matching funds, that would be the evidence of any matching funds, for example, bank statements or any sources of cash to demonstrate that you've clearly met that minimum 20% requirement. A letter from the tribes, and we can want to make sure we highlight the guidelines here, which gives you a little bit more information. But you will need to ensure that any applicant is required to submit a letter from federally recognized tribes in Colorado. That's the Southern Ute Indian and the Ute Mountain Ute. If you're have a resolution of tribal consent for progress for that project, so you'll need to make sure that's in order as well. And then any supporting documentation you have is going to be key. Anything to help address, the why this project should be funded and how you meet the eligibility criteria, and help us to make in general an informed decision about your application. And please make sure you're logging any of those additional documents on, I think it's the last tab on the project application template that we will post. Any questions so far?
Yeah, Brian, we have
Yeah.
2 questions in the chat that I don't know the answer to. I thought you might be able to answer. If not, we can get back to them. The first question is, does this only apply to new projects, or could we apply for funds to support a previously awarded project?
Um,
And that may be an Ally Terry question.
yeah, we may want to get back to you on that one. That's a pretty key question. I think we're kind of looking for new projects in general to use these funds with. It's possible you could have a spin-off from a current project, but it would need to be a new one. Allie, I'll let you go ahead and jump on that too.
Yeah, so these projects can extend your existing application, but they need to serve new locations. So, if it's connected and say you didn't get funding for a neighborhood that's right next to a project that you have, that you currently have active with us, that's great as long as those locations are listed on the eligible locations map. This money can also be used for something that is not necessarily connected to your existing location. What it can't be used for is if you maybe misjudge the costs for your project and need more money. This is not an eligible use. That's not an eligible use.
Thank you, Ally. The other question, Adam, you may know this. If not, we can take it back to the team. But the question is Conquest or CostQuest version 6 consistent with FCC 477 December 31st data?
I'm unsure on that 477 question because I believe that isn't related to the fabric at all. That was based on census geography, if I'm correct. Maybe if I get further clarification on that question.
Yeah, this is Ben. I asked the question. So, I mean, I think the answer is you guys are using the CostQuest version 6 data. It's just that the email that came out said we were using 477 December 31st, 2024. And I mean, if you look at the federal map and sort that out, there are hundreds, if not thousands, of addresses that do not have wireline service that meet the criteria in the 477 data that are not listed as eligible in this new map.
Yeah, I believe that there was a couple of judgment calls made on eligibility. Let me pull up some data. I believe we started with cable and fiber in the September 17th, 2025 availability list. We also had some deduplication of funding, which is any funded project, I think, including a couple of BDB wireless projects, just so that we don't double fund thing. I believe we removed anything that was on the BEAD eligibility list with any reason code. And then there was 3 successful CPF challenges that we removed. I think those are the caveats in terms of the eligibility there.
And Ben, thank you, Adam. Ben, if you have
Yeah.
additional questions after that, feel free to follow up to the advance inbox and we can dig into, specific location data and get back to you.
Okay, thanks. I think using the CostQuest version 6 probably clears it up.
Okay. Okay, thanks. Brian, we have got two more. It looks like Ally, the first one might be for you. It's, do projects need to involve new construction or can they include existing infrastructure?
Yeah, I may need a little more uh color for the question, so feel free to hop off mute and explain if I'm not answering your question correctly. But um projects can involve existing infrastructure and probably would involve existing infrastructure. So for example, if you had a main line and you needed to extend a little bit farther to get to some houses or drops, um that, you know, if maybe you only wanted extension for the drops, for example, or you only needed funding, I'm sorry, you only needed funding for those drops, or you only needed funding for that extension, that's perfectly fine, right? We don't have to fund your entire backhaul. I think that may be what you're asking, but if I'm misunderstanding, please let me know. That's correct. Okay, great. Yeah. So feel free to build off your systems. We would love the more cost effective, the more competitive your application.
Okay. Brian, if you want to continue, I can circle back with you at the end.
Yep, certainly. That's fine. Okay, I've lost my tab. Sorry. Where's it gone? There we go. All right, so we'll move on to the next slide and just keep the questions coming. Thank you. So submitting an application, you'll need to, this is a screenshot actually of our template. Eligible locations will need to have a location ID and the type of location only. And all of your CAIs need the type of location, the name of it, street address with the latitude and longitude included. This again is included in your template. This is the budget section. Please be as thorough as possible. And you will need to include your matching funds allocation in this as well. This eligible locations, budget location, but yeah, I've got the wrong slide. So the budget will kind of try and break down everything that you're looking to get funding for, and then we'll use that as we do the application review. So eligibility and the selection criteria, again, this is a tab on the template, and the guidelines kind of dive a little bit more detail into these, but some of the questions you need to address are your proposed technology, your eligible locations, and the speed to deployment, including, you know, tribal consent, and your experience as an applicant in running projects like these. We also try to cover the reasonable cost and matching funds section. And as I mentioned, there's a section on tribal consent if applicable. As I mentioned, just make sure you're looking at the guidelines, which kind of give you a little more detail on what we're requesting or looking for. There is a project timeline tab as well within the template. This kind of breaks down the timeline and our expectations for your project if it's to be funded. We want you to be as thorough as possible, understanding some of these may change, but just keeping in mind that we do have a very tight timeline on this program. So we want to keep it as clean as possible. Oh, I should probably mute myself at times. So.
Brian, you're actually muted now.
Yeah, of course I am. Thank you.
Sorry about that.
No, good flag. Thank you very much. So the 3 stages of our evaluation, there's a completeness review, your detail check on your eligibility, and then there's a final selection process. All applications that we receive will first be screened for their completeness and your adherence to the guidelines under the Advanced CPF grant program and Advanced mini grant program. Any applicants who do not pass this initial screening will be disqualified and not be considered for further evaluation. Our expectation is that you use the narrative section to provide any of your additional details, cost reasonableness, including cost reasonableness for the area proposed. So the selection criteria dives specifically into the total number of applications to be served by this application. This criteria includes the requested subsidy per eligible location, amount requested, proposed match, and the overall project cost efficiency. And also, if it's necessary, your project readiness. So you'll need to provide a narrative of your proposed timeline from the day your agreement is signed up until the project is completed on September 30th, 2026. Applicants will be prioritized based on the application's demonstration of project readiness, which includes the assertion of necessary permits, right-of-way access easements, and the completion of any necessary pole or make-ready permits. We cannot grant extensions on these timelines, so you'll need to be as accurate as you can. Are there any questions that we need to address before we dive into the challenge process?
There are no open questions in the chat. I don't know if we have any other questions.
Can I just really quick, just because Jamie asked a really great question, I want to clarify. So, just as a reminder, so if there's an open enforceable state or federal commitment, those locations are not eligible for this program. So, it was a bit of work on our mapping team's side, but they have created a map. The locations on the map are the eligible locations.
And there is, I think, a question on the limit of how much funding applicants can apply for. So, I mean, it's up to you, but we have approximately $800,000 available for this program. So, it is up to you to ask for however much you want, but just bear that in mind. We don't have an unlimited amount of funds here. And there's a possibility that we may find more funds that are deobligated from other grants. So, we may either run another one of these or try and do some sort of process where we can select applicants for funding if there is more available. But for now, we have about $800,000. So. All right, I'll dive into the challenge process then. So we will accept only challenges on awarded locations. When we do make our announcements for awards, that will kickstart the challenge process. We'll conduct a 14-day calendar process to ensure challenges are submitted, and we can take the full time to address any of those. Eligible entities for the challenge process include ISPs, local governments, and tribal entities. There are two sort of challenges we're looking at. So an existing service challenge where eligible entities are claiming that qualifying service already exists at that location, and then a planned service challenge where eligible entities claim plans to install qualifying broadband infrastructure to eligible locations within the next 12 months. So that challenge process, I just explained it, but this gives a little more detail. Existing service needs to be reliable wireline infrastructure in place capable of 100 megabytes symmetrical. Does not include legacy technologies such as copper, DSL, or early versions of cable. The second piece is the planned service challenge. There needs to be evidence of construction or existing agreements that prove claim deployment plans are in place, and a written commitment by the company to build out within 12 months. So the final award process. As you know, our timeline is very short, so we need to execute these agreements when we make awards as quickly as possible, ensure those projects are able to be successful. If you are not able to execute an agreement within a very short timeline, then we may need to reconsider your award. So just a warning, but the grant conditions aren't all that different from our other programs. It's pretty standard, including your need to have a payment or performance bond requirement, If you need more information on that, please make sure you follow up with us or take a look at the guidelines for additional context. And obviously, you'll be still subject to monthly performance reporting, quarterly financial reporting, and some of those, more details on those can be found in the guidelines, both the CPF grant program guidelines and the compliance and reporting guidelines. As I mentioned, if you have questions on what that looks like, feel free to reach out to our advance inbox, and we'll get a response to you as quickly as possible. That's all I've got right now, but I want to make sure there's plenty of time for you to, if you have any questions or thoughts, please feel free to share.
Yeah, we have one question in the chat, which I think Allie said she would address. Allie, do you want to talk about the mini grant eligible locations that are in close proximity to BEAD awarded locations?
Yeah, Cole, thanks so much for the question. So Cole asked if there are locations that are really close to BEAD awarded locations, whether or not that an entity would want to submit a challenge. Just as a reminder, there are two reasons that you can, so we can't tell you whether you should submit a challenge or not. So I'm not going to do that. But what I will say is there are two reasons that you can submit a challenge. So the first is if you have existing service. If you have existing service, then you can submit a challenge. If you have planned service, you must be built out within 12 months. If you're not going to be built out with 12 months, it's not an eligible challenge. So those are your two criteria. If you feel like that fits you, then definitely submit a challenge.
Thanks, Allie. And then we have Sherry. Yeah, thank you, Sherry. She's got a couple questions. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Awesome. Thank you so much. First question I have, can you just verify, is this funding state or federal?
Yes, it's federal funding. I'm sorry.
Federal funding. Okay,
Straight to
perfect.
that. Yeah. So SLFRF and CPF are both federal funding sources, so they'll subject to all the federal reporting
Okay.
and monitoring evaluation requirements.
Perfect. And then do you know if there will be a look back period for this grant program?
What do you mean by look back, Sherry?
So I know in some of the past grant programs, there's a look back. So say example, there was something we'd applied for before and we could actually look back and say, hey, we've already built this, or this is something we've already had in place. If that makes sense at all.
So, oh, go ahead, Brian.
No, please go ahead.
Let me just make sure I just want to make sure I'm answering the question you're really asking, Sherry. So, for a look back period, for example, if someone were to apply and be awarded locations in one area, you're asking whether or not there would be the ability to go back and say, hold on a second, those locations were already built out?
Not the locations, the materials. The materials, the infrastructure is already there, and the materials are already there.
Yeah. So pre-award costs, basically.
Right.
Yeah. So those costs are not eligible for this.
Okay. Do you by chance have a list of eligible costs that's available?
We sure do. So if you go to the CBO website, there is a link within these program guidelines to the larger CPF guidelines, and there's a list of eligible expenses in that.
Okay, so it's the CPF, the original CPF guidelines.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And so there are no pre-award expenses allowed. Inventory expenses are allowed.
Inventory expenses. Okay.
So, if you buy a roll of fiber and you keep it in your warehouse, right? Regardless of when you purchase that fiber, we allow you to use it, assuming that it meets the specs of the project that you've proposed.
As long as it's fiber inventory.
And as long as it's not been installed.
Okay.
Yep. So anything that's already been installed is ineligible for reimbursement.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah. Great question. That's a great question. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Let me make sure I've got anything related to that answered. I think I do. I have a few of them, so I do apologize. I just want to get them all answered. I do understand the overall funding is limited. Is there a maximum cost per location threshold?
No.
Is there a grant cap per application? Okay. I also understand the guideline specifies that projects can be split into several applications. Is there a limit on how many applications an organization can submit?
No.
Nice.
These are such easy questions. Keep them coming.
Is NEPA review required prior to starting construction on an awarded project?
For CPF projects, there is a historic review that is required.
Okay.
Yeah, and you don't get to choose your funding source, so assume yes.
Okay. Are there any non-deployment costs allowable?
No.
Okay. Is the application Excel already available on the website for downloading?
No, it will be made available at the end of this webinar.
Oh, perfect. Awesome. I think that's all the questions I have.
Thanks, Sherry.
Thank you so much for answering for me.
Craig, I see that you have your hand raised.
Hey, I can lower it. Getting tired holding my arm up. This is great. Thanks for all your work. Thanks for all you do here. Maybe a question for Adam in follow-up to Ben's questions. For the eligible locations for the mini grant, did you remove federal and state enforceable commitments that were funded, or did you include federal and state commitments that were unfunded as well? For example, from the unlicensed fixed wireless challenge period, where those were removed from BEAD consideration?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think I touched on that when I was rambling about the different fields that we had, yes, no on. So we started with cable fiber in the September 16th, 2025 availability against Fabric 6. Then we removed funded locations. And I will say federal was Polygon. Well, federal programs from the federal funding maps that were polygons were removed via Polygon. Everything else was deduplicated on a location ID basis. So there is an outside possibility that if the fabric is super wonky and a location ID dropped and a location ID popped back on, and I think this would be narrowly rare, that the location ID wouldn't match up there, but that would be 1 in a million-ish. Then it was BEAD eligible. So to your point about whether something was funded or not, I believe because of the complexity of the reason codes in the BEAD eligibility process that were kind of cascading, we removed all BEAD eligible locations. So to your point of funded, unfunded, because there was reason code 1, 2, 4, 5, basically anything that was initially eligible from BEAD was removed because of how limited the funding was. And then the final thing that was removed was the 3 successful CPF challenges, which were a couple hundred locations, I think, or maybe 1,000 locations.
Okay. And what I think I'm seeing is from BEAD, the unlicensed fixed wireless challenge locations, which are unfunded challenges, but you do have a commitment for maintaining service for the 4-year period at that commitment level. So it's unfunded in BEAD were removed, though they would have been eligible under CPF because it was non-wireline.
That is correct. you're absolutely right on that.
So, and I guess the question would be, is it appropriate to apply the unfunded, because outside of BEAD, unfunded is not a federal or state enforceable commitment. Is it appropriate to apply that for a CPF federal program versus what would have been permissible under BEAD, which
So,
allowed
Craig-
for the 100 by 20?
Yeah, just wanted to sort of baseline that the state of Colorado under ARPA rules, both SLFRF and CPF, can determine eligibility maps. And so the state of Colorado's CBO has determined this is the eligibility map for this program. If there are additional locations that you'd like to apply for that are outside of this map, then maybe Advanced Local will be an option for that in the future. But for now, these are the eligible locations.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Craig.
Well, great. Those are some robust questions. We appreciate it. Any other thoughts, questions? And again, like as I mentioned, you are very welcome to reach out to us through the Advanced Local inbox, and the Advanced Local inbox, the Advanced CBO inbox. Come on, Brian. So yeah, Advanced Local's on my brain. So that is another program we'll be launching early 2026. But any questions related to this program right now, please follow up, and we'll get back to you as soon as we can. We understand it's a tight deadline. So. All right, well, I believe that the template is going to be published very shortly after this webinar. Again, our guidelines are all on our website. The template will be up. The mapping location tools will all be available as well. So feel free to do that. And I think we look forward to seeing your applications and continuing to try our best to serve Colorado to the extent we can with whatever funds we have available. So if there are no more questions, I'll end this webinar, and thank you everyone for participating, and thanks for the great questions. And yeah, we'll be in touch.
Thank you.
Thank you.